again, thank you, Rob, for joining us today. I mentioned that I have a series of questions from the students in my class. We've been working on a big marketing project, and now we're heading towards the direction of advertising. And I know, obviously, with your background, I wanted to reach out to you so we might be able to ask some of those questions. But going back again, I know you were mentioning it before, but how did you end up kind of getting into this business? How did you get into sports broadcasting?
So from a relatively young age, I'd say around middle school, I developed an interest in television production. I also was developing an interest in sports at the same time. Didn't necessarily know they were going to end up together. But then when I was in high school, the guy who had my job before me, Seth Rothman, who's now at the Yes Network, was recruiting people to do broadcasts of varsity sports games just for fun as a hobby. Recruited me initially as a cameraman, and then eventually we kind of got a crew together, and we did play-by-play and simple like one camera shoots of varsity games. We eventually became the film crew for varsity football and basketball while we were at Mamaroneck. So I guess it just kind of grew from there, and then right around the time I finished college, Seth was starting up the varsity sports program at LMC TV, and became a part of that. And then when he left for the Yes Network, I luckily was recommended for his position, and that's where I've been since.
That's fantastic. Now, did you started doing the broadcast when you were in high school? So you were doing them at Mamaroneck? That's excellent. And it's a great information for our kids to know, because I think it's awesome for them to understand that there's opportunities coming up here in the next few years for them to get into something like this if they were interested. What's it been like for you? How has it been in terms of being a sports broadcaster, and what are some of the things that you enjoy? What's the job entail?
I have a lot of fun doing it. I think there's a lot more work involved than people might notice from the outside. A lot of it's just doing your proper research, so you sound like you know what you're talking about when you're on TV. Typically, I'm doing post-production on one game while I'm researching the next game. And research involves anything from getting team rosters, records, key players, recent history. So that's a lot of the day-to-day stuff.
Yep. And you mentioned about going off to college. What's your educational background? Like, what did you actually intend when you were in school to study to do this kind of work, or did you have a different thought in mind and then kind of came back to this?
This was generally what I didn't know exactly where I was going to end up with it, but I studied journalism during my undergrad at Albany. I unfortunately didn't have a broadcast program there, so there's a lot of print stuff, which was good because I learned that I don't really like writing that much. So
sometimes the best mistakes are the ones that end up working out in your favor, right?
Right. And then I went on to New York University after that, where I did pursue broadcast. I think the program there was called News and Documentary, so I did a little bit more long form stuff there. But any chance I had an opportunity, I would try to focus on sports.
Okay. And do you think that there's multiple paths sort of into this industry? I mean, you obviously said you had some background in it by going to journalism and stuff. How are some of the other ways in which people might get involved with this?
That's probably the number one way. PR can be another way if you're want to join on that side of it. Less journalism and more probably working for an organization or a team, more on that end. And of course, the third option is be a retired athlete that knows how to talk well.
That always helps.
Yeah.
Now, what other? You mentioned a lot of different aspects of the job. What are some of the other types of careers that are connected with this? That may not be people that are actually in front of the camera, but are involved in producing everything.
Yeah, there's a whole team. That person in front of the camera is just one member of a team. There are camera people. There are people in the control room doing graphics, doing audio. When you're on a professional broadcast, you've got people doing stats, people researching, your technical crew, your studio element, your game cutaways, or a whole other crew doing other things. Production assistants are also someone who might have wanted to go into being on air, but they're kind of working their way up. And being a production assistant is kind of a catch-all phrase. There's a lot of things that people do that are production assistants, but a lot of times are the backbone of a production.
That's great. Describe for us your typical day. like what is, and again, it may not ever be a typical day, but what are some of the things on a day-to-day basis that you're working on?
Well, I think I'll just take you through like a typical game day. That way it kind of encompasses a little bit more of everything that might happen. So on a typical day, I usually get to the office around 11 o'clock, and sports and TV people do tend to have schedules that are shifted later in the day.
Yep.
So usually, those late morning, early afternoon hours are spent, preparing for the game. Like I said, rosters, records, recent news stories, whatever I can get my hands on, because information can be really hard to come by when you're covering sports at the high school level.
Yep.
So anything you can get, you're going to take it. It's not like, in college or in professional where you show up for work 2 hours before a game and they hand you a packet. It's everything you need.
Right.
So a little bit more legwork is involved there. Other tasks I might take care of, social media posting. I also do some, I manage our part-time crew, so I might be doing some of that or scheduling them. Taking care of some payroll stuff. I got to assign other tasks, by my superiors. And then, of course, I'm also working on post-production of previous games, although that is slowly going to be changing soon.
Okay. Now, what is some of the most challenging aspects of the position that you're in?
That's a great question. For me, I'd say on a personal level, I have a 2-year-old who goes to bed at 7:30, so some nights I just don't get to see her.
Yeah.
But as far as an actual part of the job, I'd say a kind of a unique challenge is balancing production quality with the desire to give people experience.
Mm-hmm.
We're here not just to put on a high quality production, but a lot of times we're also someone's first experience in sports broadcasting. So I have to get a little strategic in terms of, taking some of the less experienced crew members and putting them in a position where they can learn something and improve their skills, but then also give them that space. So if they do fail, it's not going to be catastrophic for the production.
That's interesting. That's a great answer. Now, how much of your
long names? Long, difficult names.
That was a question that actually one of the students asked, was how do you figure out the names that on a game-to-game basis?
Yeah, that's actually a fun question. Normally what we'll do is we'll just go up to the coach and say, hey, can you give me, how do you say 27's name? And about half the time they won't really know. And I just call him Ben. I don't know. Let's ask him.
And I'm sure that there are certain schools where you have more difficult names than others, like when we end up playing KO. Or something like that. Could be a little tricky.
I always double check those, but the Japanese names have a certain regimentedness to them that you can usually figure it out. There's a few nuances there, and we always do check that. But
sure.
Yeah, at first glance, it's whoa. But if you kind of break it all down, it's actually not as bad as it sounds.
And then trying to do it in the moment, though, sometimes can be a little bit tricky, I can imagine.
It can be. Yeah, you can get tongue-tied pretty easily.
So how much of your position involves sort of advertisement production, and what kind of skills would you say are needed for that component of a position? So,
I don't really create ads, per se, but I do most of the production for the sports program at LMC TV.
Yep.
So the skills really are, video editing, Photoshop, maybe After Effects. Social media is something I use a lot as a way to connect with people.
Yep.
Those are the main skills, I would say.
And that question actually came up from one of the other students about how impactful has social media been in relation to advertising and the ability to sort of market a product.
Oh, it's huge. I mean, social media is a chance to really interact directly with your audience. And you don't really get that opportunity to have that back and forth with the general public. And a lot, traditionally your ads on TV and that's it. They can watch it. Yeah. They can go do the dishes. They can do whatever. They may not even see it. And on social media, you really do have that more direct interaction with someone. So it's really an opportunity to keep your audience engaged with your message.
And do you think that has been a net plus, or is that something that can be difficult at times to manage?
It can be difficult to manage. I think a lot of the big companies will have at least one person, if not a team, dedicated just to their social media.
Yep.
On our scale, I haven't found it to be unmanageable. I enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. But yeah, things can blow up at a time and you might be like, oh, I'm stuck replying to all these tweets and I can't get anything done.
And that does happen on occasion.
Yeah.
In terms of making an ad or dealing with advertising, how difficult do you think it is to create something that people actually will remember? And I know in your position, not necessarily doing advertisements, but you oftentimes, I notice on your social media, you'll put out video clips of, you know, what you thought was the best play of the year or something like that. How difficult is it for you to make those kind of decisions in order to be able to produce something that people are going to latch onto?
You know, it can be difficult or it can be easy. The content kind of drives it. I mean, if someone, you know, hits a double overtime buzzer beater, then it's pretty much laid out on a platter for me, and I just have to do the work to make it look pretty.
Right.
If it's, you know, some weeks it's, you know, the games we covered weren't very exciting, and kind of digging for something that was relatively exciting. You got to phrase it in a way that kind of makes it clickable, not quite clickbait, but
Right.
you know, you just want to make it seem interesting, even if I may have had to struggle to make it be interesting.
So I think an important thing to remember, and again, I'm speaking to both to you on this, but also to my students, is obviously generating something that's interesting from a content standpoint is very impactful in terms of your ability to be able to draw an interest from the audience and what they actually might want to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, one of the questions that came up, and obviously, it's you know, something that's going on right now, and I'm sure you can speak to this. How has this current crisis sort of impacted sport media, sport broadcasting? And is this been how difficult has this been in terms of the sport business side of things?
You know, it's been rough. I mean, obviously there's no sports going on, so
Right.
everyone's had to get really creative in terms of their content. You know, like the personalities that you might know from watching games on TV, I think they're doing fine.
Yep.
You know, people don't think about, you know, part-timers or freelancers. They're just out of work, so it's a tough time for them. But you know, I am confident that sports is so popular that once the games do start up again, everything's going to go back to normal. There's just too much interest and too much money in the industry for it not to, in my opinion.
Now, do you guys, how far back does your videos go in terms of sports, and how often are you able to sort of bring back maybe what was a great game or a great broadcast or something like that? Because you're seeing that a lot right now. ESPN playing, you know, the 30 best games for Major League Baseball, you know, things like that. Are you guys able to tap into resources like that as well?
Yeah, we've been floating around the idea of doing like a game rewatch from a few years ago, just to see if, you know, how interested people are. You know, it's definitely one thing that a lot of the networks have gone for, is to try to rebroadcast these old games. And personally, it just makes me sad. Like, I don't mind seeing highlights, like that's really cool, but to see the whole game, like I already know how it ended.
Yeah, that's true too. Unless it's like Apollo 13, where you actually know the end of the movie, but it's one of those situations where it just grabs a hold of you anyway. It is probably really hard to find that kind of content. In terms of the future of LMC TV, what are some of the goals that you have for the station and the programming going forward? And maybe what are some of the goals that you have as a broadcaster yourself?
Well, for the program, something that we're almost ready to roll out, we actually would have had it by now if this pandemic hadn't hit, was a mobile production van, which we've been working on for nearly 2 years now, and it's just about ready. It's up in Connecticut, getting the finishing touches, and it's awesome. I don't even know if I can fully describe what it is and what it does, but it's basically a control room on wheels.
Yep.
So we're able to go and set up a production from virtually anywhere. Sports is going to be a major focus of how it gets used, in addition to other community events, parades, things like that. We were going to make an appearance with it at STEM, but that got unfortunately postponed.
Right.
I think that would have been on Friday last week.
Yep.
So that's something that we're really excited about, and not only that, but it's you know, it's going to enable us to broadcast live sports, which we haven't really done before. And so, you know, we're hoping that generates more community interest as well, because that's one of the struggles that our company has, is not enough people around here know that we even exist.
Right.
So that's something we've been really focusing on recently, is just trying to work on visibility and also improving upon the services that we already do provide the community.
Okay, excellent. And one last question. Well, actually two. I'll get to the last one in a second. But what would be your best piece of advice for somebody that might be interested in becoming a broadcaster in the future? What is something that you would share with them?
Start practicing right now. And it's as easy as, flip on one of those old time games or turn on your PlayStation and start playing Madden and hit the mute button and start talking. That way you can get yourself into a flow that way, kind of get more comfortable seeing action, because it's all seeing something in real time and then using your brain to instantly spit it out in words in a way that makes coherent sense.
Sure.
So that's really, my number one advice is that the more experience you get, the better your skills are going to be. And that's even when you're someone who's starting to do it professionally. Is, I've watched DVDs of games that I did 5-10 years ago, and I think I was awful. So, the more you do it, the better you're going to get. Record it yourself. That's another thing, is record yourself doing it and play it back. You'll get a really good idea of verbally what's working and not working, and what you can try to do next time to do it better.
Sure. That's great advice. And then the last question is kind of a fun question. We have a few in the class, hopeful future varsity athletes. And so the one question came up, how do you choose who you're going to interview post game after you've broadcasted one of the games?
I get that question a lot. People are really interested in that one. We have a few different criteria that we use more as a guideline than as a rule, but generally our first thing we'd go to is there a clear player of the game? Did someone just score like 5 goals in a soccer game? Did someone just put up 40 in a basketball game? Then it's easy. Other than that, we do have a loose limitation that we use, that we want to get different athletes opportunities to be interviewed. So we generally won't interview the same athlete twice in a season unless we get to the playoffs. Then we might be more willing to do that, just to give more people an opportunity to be interviewed. So, if that's the case, and the person we've already spoken to is someone who would be a strong candidate, then we'll look at, was there a second star of the game, or is there a captain we haven't spoken to? Or if all else fails, we'll just say, hey, coach, who do you think we should talk to?
No, don't tell anybody that. Don't tell them that it's on us. We're always putting it on you guys when they want to know who's being interviewed. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Again, Rob, I really want to thank you for taking the time. I know days can get busy. There's a lot going on for everybody, and I do greatly appreciate you taking this time to talk to my class. If any further questions come up, I'll shoot you an email.
Sure.
Just see if I can clarify anything that any of the students might have. But again, I do want to thank you very much, and hope that you and your family stay safe during all of this. And, hopefully we'll be able to see you back out on the fields and the basketball courts very soon.
I hope so too. I hope everyone in the class is happy and healthy and safe. I want to get back out there. I'm going nuts in here. I want to get out on the field and start commentating or doing camera or something, or I want my van, man. I've been waiting for this for a long time.
I can't wait to get a behind-the-scenes tour of the van once you bring it onto campus.
Oh, it's great. We were able to work inside the layout of the van like a VIP viewing spot. Oh, so feel free to check it out.
That'll be fantastic. Anyway, Rob, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and stay safe, stay well, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, you too. Take care.
All right, thanks, Rob.